It's my job to welcome you here to Summit London on this amazingly warm February afternoon. And also this is our third Leaders in Automotive event here at Summit London. So I'm very proud. I joined the business last year and I head up our sales operation. So I'm the one that's been emailing you. So just a couple of housekeeping points. There is a fire exit just behind you. If you would go out of the door you came in, we're not expecting a fire alarm, but if we do have one, that's the quickest and safest way out of the building. There are also toilets just on this corner over here. There will be a break halfway through, so anyone that needs more refreshments will be able to have those. So I'm going to hand over to our CEO shortly, but the purpose of the event that we like to host here is really just to make sure that we can share some knowledge and insight, and also particularly help and shape the thinking about how we can make the automotive industry better, particularly for our consumers. So don't use mic one. So I'm going to hand over now to Hedley Alott, who is the CEO and founder of Summit. He's going to chair the sessions this afternoon and also explain who's going to be on the stage and the purpose for being here. So thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hedley and I'm going to look after you as best I can this afternoon. Something amazing happened a couple of weeks ago, which I want to share with you. We have been working with a retailer in America for a number of months. And they asked a question and they said, we think we know how our shoppers shop, but we're not sure. Can you help us? And 2 weeks ago, we finished a piece of work and the results were amazing. And today is all about sharing some of the thinking behind it. And what was amazing was that this retailer, a large grocery retailer, who have thousands of shoppers every day, e-commerce is only less than 2% of their business. By e-commerce, I mean people who buy things online, actually buy online, less than 2%. And we surveyed over 6,000 of their customers, and we asked them how they shopped. We watched how they shopped. We shopped along with them. And over 90% of those people, there was at least one step in the journey where they touched online. But what was even more amazing, for the first time, we were able to take all of those people and we were able to match them against how much they spent. And guess what? Anybody who had any interaction with online in their journey spent at least $250 more, and sometimes up to $1,000 more a year. None of them bought anything online. They just touched online. And over the last 18 years, as I've built and grown and run some of my colleagues, we've had an amazing journey and witnessed the growth and the development of this phenomena. And one thing's clear, which is it is not all about selling online. It is about using online to sell. And hence, the title of today's afternoon is very important. Use online to sell, not sell online. This isn't going to be one of those afternoons where we have a few speakers with a few boring PowerPoint slides and you drift to sleep along for the wine at half time. Today, we're going to do our very best to answer that question and explain what we mean. And the way we're going to do that is to look at what we can learn from retail and retailing, because retail has been at the forefront of that change. And then in the second half of the afternoon, we're going to look at then how can we apply that to automotive. So here's how I propose to answer the exam question. Use online to sell, not sell online. Firstly, we're going to hear and look at the changing expectations of the customer, because they are changing rapidly every week in front of us. We're then going to look at what digital excellence looks like in terms of a more enjoyable customer journey. And then we are going to have that glass of wine. And then we're going to come back and we're going to look at how we can apply what we've learned from retail into winning the moments that matter in a shopping journey in automotive, really using online to sell more. And then, Finally, we're going to say, that's great, all that theory. How on earth do you go and apply that in practice when you go back to work? Now, these events aren't about PowerPoint slides. They are about the cast. And I'm really excited today by the cast we've put together to help answer this question. And I'd like to share our cast for the afternoon. First, we've got Alex Ardella from GDR Creative Intelligence. Alex will introduce GDR, but Alex is a technology and a retail expert. He's got some wonderful views on this topic. And Alex spends his life, when he's not thinking about that, trying to connect everything in his home to the internet. We've got Nick King, who will be up next. Nick leads the thought leadership around online retailing and digital with Auto Trader. Nick came and spoke before. He's going to share what he thinks digital excellence looks like and what a great customer journey looks like. And then after the break, when we apply this to automotive, I'm going to be joined by Thomas Hons, who's the director of our automotive product and technology, with Lila Kovacs and Katrina Wittgens. And they are behavioral and business psychologists, and we're going to look at what does a great journey look like in automotive and what is going on in the mind of the customer around those moments. And then finally, our final member of the cast is Toby Astor, who was formerly at JLR and was responsible for much of the e-commerce development and innovation there, and who has just joined us at Summit. And he's going to share his thoughts on how to apply some of the learnings today in automotive. I want to share with you an important quotation, the second half of our exam question. This is a quote some of you may know or may not. It was written by Jack Ma, the CEO of Alibaba, about 1.5 years ago. I'll read it out. Pure e-commerce will be reduced to a traditional business and replaced by the concept of new retail, the integration of online and offline logistics and data across a single value chain with the customer at the core. Wow. I want to bring you back to my example I opened with. E-commerce for that retailer in America was responsible for 2%. That's it, only 2% of people. And it might go a little bit higher, but it won't be more than 10. And in grocery retail in the UK today, it's only 10%. This quote explodes that altogether and says, it's not about the number of e-commerce sales and the percentage. It's a bit about what online can do for your business. And what's really exciting, if you want to look where it's really happening and changing, look no further than China. The innovation is extraordinary. And if you said to me, what do I think Alibaba are? Are they technologists? Are they retailers? Well, I think they're amazing choreographers. For me, they are choreographers of a customer journey. And their vocabulary is technology and data. And they use analytics and capabilities. And clearly, there are businesses who are still thinking about growing their e-commerce sales. Well, you're a bit late, because from Jack Ma's point of view, that's about to become a traditional business. That's over and done with now. People expect more. So, to open and start answering our exam question, I'm going to invite Alex up to talk about what are those expectations of the customer today and what can we learn from retail. Alex.
Thank you. Oh, off to a good start. See why Britney Spears is such a professional. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for coming out. Very pleased to be opening up today's festivities. I want to talk to you about the new world of retail, the new world of customers. Just in case anyone is unaware, we all have customers. In fact, you have hundreds and hundreds of millions of them that you don't even know about yet. And today I want to tell you what their expectations are. I want to talk about the shifts that we've seen that have created an entirely new set of conditions. In fact, the conditions that led to the birth of new retail and Jack Ma's great quote there. I want to talk about how we approach innovation in this new world, give you some hints and tips about how you can start to think slightly outside of where you are as the kind of auto industry, and learn from the mistakes, to be honest, that we've all made in the painful transition that we've had to this point. And then I want to look at some brands that are doing it well, some inspirations that I think can help you on your journey to digitally transform. And that's really what this is about. This is about changing the way you approach customers, changing the way you approach retail. And absolutely using online to sell, not selling online. For those of you who don't know GDI, I'd hope some of you might have heard of us, but we're very lucky to work with some of the biggest and best brands in the world, and we help them think about their future. We help them think about what to do about the change that they're seeing. And you probably looked at all those logos, if you can see them, and noted there were no automotive, there's no car makers there, because that's the first thing I always do. And that's very deliberate. In fact, I'm not going to talk to you at all about selling cars. And one reason for that is obviously I'd hope that you know more about selling cars than I do. The only car I've ever sold was a Skoda Fabia when I was 19. But more importantly, this is about understanding the bigger world, because you're really at the start of your journey in terms of digital transformation. And what I want to bring to you is the wide world of retail, not just selling cars, but selling everything. And you might be thinking, well, what has selling a tin of beans got to do with what I have to go home and do after this? My head's full of ideas. And really the key is, it's this guy standing in the middle of the aisle, right? It's shoppers. Like I said, we all have customers. They're the reason that we all go to work in the morning. They're the reason that we all have to do what we do. And that's what I want to talk about. How are those expectations being changed? Because we've seen an unimaginable transformation in retail. In fact, we've seen two. So the first one was very much the story of the 20th century. And this story, this transformation, was actually driven by technology. That technology was the car, not the smartphone. So we went from a world of kind of independent retailers and high streets and shopping local to where you lived. And along the way, Carrefour in 1963 opened their first hypermarket. And this was a phenomenon at the time. It was 20 kilometers outside of Paris. It would have been unthinkable 10 years earlier because they didn't have enough people who owned cars. But now they're populous, their customers had cars, they could get out. They built this incredible one-stop shop where you'd travel to it. It had an astonishing 12 checkouts, if you can imagine that. That was the height of innovation in 1963. It had a petrol pump to make sure that you could get back to your home without running out of petrol. And this was the main paradigm of the 20th century, right? It was driven by the car, and it was out of town, and it was big box, and crucially, it was physical. Now, that took 100 years, right? The second transformation took 10. So you can see the transformation we're going through now, that timeline is collapsing. The next one might take 2. And although it started right at the tail end of the 20th century with the first kind of dot-com era, really we can trace it all back to this guy. The launch of the iPhone in 2007 really set us on the course where we're at now, where the internet has become an inescapable part of all of our daily lives. It's put digital and online everywhere. It seamlessly blended the online and offline worlds together. And that's what we've seen over the last 10 years, this astonishing period of transformation. What previously took 100 years is now just taking 10. And you'll all be familiar, I'm sure, with this scene. You walk down any high street in the country, we are absolutely addicted. Turns out if you put all of the world's information in our pockets, we quite like it and we like more of it. So the genie's out of the bottle now. We can't go back. And this is where your customer is. This is the world that we live in. And there's some really interesting stats, I think, just to put this into perspective, especially among young people. There are many young people whose apparently full-time job is staring at their phone. Misguided, the youth fashion retailer, talk about how their customer touches their phone more than their face. They scroll up to 10 miles a year. How many of you run 10 miles a year, let alone scroll? This is where we're at now. And this one at the bottom, Britons check their phones, on average, that's from Ofcom, every 12 minutes, which means you'll check your phone 3 times during this presentation. But that's fine, you're allowed. If I do it, then that's when we've got a problem. And in the face of this kind of unimaginable change, this digital integration, we're really at a point where physical retail is at an inflection point. We're needing to decide now, what do we want the future of retail to look like? Because it turns out nothing lasts forever. We spent 100 years building all of these physical outposts of retail. You know, it's bricks and mortar. It must be here forever. And then suddenly in the last 10 years, we've seen a whole load of retailers think, well, actually, maybe I don't need all that space. Maybe I don't need to be directly in the town centre. So if I think about, you know, you have all these physical items, you have your dealerships, you have your brands, and we're all built up in this old world. And now we have to work out, well, what do we do with all of these assets that we've got? And they are fantastic assets. How do we adapt them for the new reality? And let's just think about how customer expectations are changing, because what we're seeing is a complete blending of inputs, of insight, of experiences across channels. Let's think about how much they're growing. If you think about where your customer expectations are at, whether it's about price, whether it's about speed, whether it's about the selection that you have available to them, the challenging thing about them is that they always go up. Right? That's the problem with customer expectations. They always go up. No one ever wants worse service, more expensive prices, less choice. And so the best way I think I can illustrate this is with a personal example, and I think you all will have done this, I know I certainly did, which was the first time that you experienced, you got on a plane and you noticed that there was Wi-Fi. Right? So the fact they had to put Wi-Fi on planes in the first place is notable. We couldn't go 7 hours without checking our email and sending a tweet. But you'll probably do what I did, right? Which is you get on and you pay your $25 or whatever it was. And the first thing you did once you were logged on is you sent an email to someone saying, oh my God, I'm on a plane, I'm using Wi-Fi, I'm on the internet, it's 40,000 feet. You're sending your WhatsApp groups pictures of your in-flight meal. And that reminds us like how exciting technology can be, right? When we get access to this stuff, it blows our minds. And that's the first time, because it reminds us how transformative the internet is. I think when you take it away, you're reminded how great it is when it comes back. But that's the first time you use it. The second time you use Wi-Fi on a plane, it's the worst thing in the world, right? Because it's too expensive, it's too slow, can't get on Netflix, that's blocked, can't get on Spotify. And that's just how quickly these things change. It goes from being this transformative technology to something that is humdrum and then eventually part of the furniture. And that's the world we're doing. That's how quick customer expectations change. They move at the speed of light, and so we have to move with them. Every company on this slide did two things. They came into an incumbent category, and they used the internet to deliver a completely radical customer experience. They changed the way the category was done, right? And at the time, people probably made fun. I mean, Wikipedia, who would trust an encyclopedia that anyone can edit? Who would get into a stranger's car? And they were mocked for it. People said, well, they'll never catch on. And it turns out actually people learn quick. And so what they did by delivering that better experience, by using the power of the internet to improve that customer experience, they won. They beat out the competition in their category. And then, of course, they completely changed expectations for what that category should operate now. I mean, when was the last time you used a road atlas, right? So this is what we're dealing with. And the other interesting thing is just, again, to illustrate how quick this change has happened. Does anyone want to guess the oldest brand on this slide? It is Amazon. No, it's good. It's good. So Amazon are, in fact, the oldest brand on this slide. Amazon are 25 this year. For reference, Amazon changed the world 3 months younger than Justin Bieber. All right? In fact, if you took every brand on this slide and added together all of their ages, Harrods is older than every brand on this slide put together. Right? That's how quickly these brands have completely become part of the furniture. And what's interesting as well is because all of these brands are accessed in the same way, what's really interesting is customer expectations start to blend between categories, whereas before we had fairly delineated, my experience getting a taxi was not at all related to my experience searching out information or shopping for a Christmas present. But now, because every single one of these brands, and with the exception of Amazon, they're all purely digital, they're all accessed in the same way, they're all an app on my phone. And so therefore, we start to see this weird blending of expectations. So not only now are these brands in competition with their category, they're in competition with everyone. And that, I'm afraid to say, is your reality. These are all your competitors, whether you like it or not. And I'll just show you some examples of how that's blending. Now, in in 3 minutes' time, I can call a taxi to take me anywhere in the world. I could be on my way to Scotland within 3 minutes. And funny enough, if you get an Uber that's this long, they don't tell you the price. But assuming I have infinite money, I can be anywhere in 3 minutes. Now, in that world, am I really going to wait 4 to 8 working days and pay $4.95 for delivery when I'm shopping, in a world where I can have anything I want? No, of course I'm not. Let's think about Netflix and Spotify. I can sit on my sofa and have access in a second to every film ever made, every album ever written. And I can just browse through that at my will. Now, when I'm trying to find a romantic partner, do you think customers are really going to choose to go down the pub and see the same 5 people they've seen down the pub every Friday night for the last 5 years? Or are they going to go towards Tinder? Are they going to have thousands of potential matches a swipe away? This Uber example, why would I pay for delivery? Why would I wait when Amazon Prime can have it at my house within 2 hours? Let's think about personalization. Let's think about the online experience. This is, every electronic interaction we have with the brand is innately personalized, right? They know so much about me, for good or for bad. All social networks, all retailers, in this case, they know a lot about my cat. But they know me, they understand me, and they tailor everything to my particular needs. And in that world, when I go to my bank and I sit down with this guy, my bank manager, and I want a mortgage or a loan, or I'm trying to take out a finance package on a new car, why doesn't he know who I am? Why do I have to answer the same 10 questions? He's seen every retail purchase I've made for the last 5 years. He knows my salary coming into my account every month. Why would I want to go through all that pain? Why does he not know? Why does he not understand who I am? Of course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for one of the new banks. The banks that already know all this stuff, don't even bother, give me a decision in literally seconds based on the data I've already given them. So you can see all of these experiences are starting to blend into each other. And like I said, the change is actually accelerating. Despite the fact we've seen so much in the last 25 years, we're seeing more and more as the world gets more and more connected. And I'll give you an example, because we all kind of feel this in our guts. But if you think about what makes something ubiquitous, right? If we think it's part of the furniture, we can pull a number out and say, let's say if there's 50 million of something, it's pretty standard, right? 60 million people in the UK. When there's 50 million of something, that's pretty much standard procedure. And you might have seen some variation on this diagram before. But what's really interesting, if you look at how long various different technologies took to reach that magic number, as the world got more connected, we see that just drop off a cliff. So it took airlines 64 years, cars 62 years to get to that point. And then the internet comes along, right? The internet itself took 7 years. Facebook took 4, WeChat took 1. And of course, right down at the bottom, if you can't see it, it's the pinnacle of human achievement, which is Pokemon Go. 19 days. 19 days to go from nowhere to everywhere. Right? This is the world we're in. And in the face of this change, we have to have a new approach. We have to have a more disruptive approach to innovation. We have to think about how can we move faster? How can we be more confident? How can we be more empowered to make the decisions in order to meet these new customer expectations? And that's what I want to show you now, because our methodology is all about looking at the wisdom of the market, right? Looking at what's going on. That's why I'm not going to show you any car examples today, because you have to look outside of what your competition is doing. That's where the real insights come. And Henry Ford knew this. He would not have invented the car had he run a focus group, right? But this is, and by the way, there is actually before someone puts their hand up, there is no evidence he said this, but it's easier if he did. So this is how he operated. This is how you get those disruptive breakthroughs, is you don't just look at what you're doing and think about a slightly better version of it. You have to look broader. You have to look at what everyone is doing. Because like I just said, all of those customers, all of those companies, they're your competitors. So you need to be looking outside of your individual bubble. And I want to show you what that looks like now. I want to put new retail into practice. I want to show you some of the brands and some of the technologies I think are relevant to you as you go on this journey of digital transformation. So I think the key theme of today is about using online to sell, not selling online. And the key thing for me is that is just getting to where customers have always been, right? There is no customer in the world that thinks in channels. No one thinks about online versus offline. It's a marketing invention or a business invention to suit how we wanted to structure our businesses, right? Their journeys are so complex now. They dive between online and offline, physical and digital, friends and brands and journalists, how they get to that decision where they're buying the car. And then what do they go for? How long do they expect to wait? All of that is completely non-linear. We cannot track it. We cannot predictably predict where they were going to do, what the journey they were going to take was, like we could have done in the past. We don't even know the personas of people anymore. That's what this world has done. So new retail has to think in a completely different way. It has to be completely seamless, omnipresent, and completely integrate those two worlds together. And actually, with no disrespect to Jack Ma, we actually have a slightly simpler version of that quote. For us, new retail is two things. It's fun when you want it to be fun, and it's fast when you want it to be fast. And if you think about all the purchases you've ever made, if you think about the journey you make to buy a single item, right? Buying a car is a really fun and massive purchase, right? I want that to be fun. I want to enjoy it. But buying a tin of beans, no one cares, right? We want that to be fast and efficient. And I do think when we think about particularly technology, we tend to go towards making everything more seamless, more slick. But actually, sometimes friction is good. Sometimes we want people to enjoy the retail process. And I think you can easily categorize it. You can say, well, this is shopping. This is the thing that people do for leisure. And this is buying. This is the thing they do because they have to. And if we think about the products that you sell, or you think about the journeys that you have, what elements of that journey do you want people to shop for? What do you want people to enjoy? And actually, once they've made that decision, what do you want to just get out of the way as quickly as possible? If we think about the high you feel when you've just configured your car to the low you feel when you're told it's going to be 6 months to have it delivered, that's where those two things need to coexist. And it is possible to make them coexist. And this is a great example, right? This is all about giving customers choice and building our brands, building our shops, building our technology to offer that choice. So this is, I'll stand out of the way, but this is two ways of getting a sandwich, right? This achieves the same customer goal. On the left is Amazon Go, right? In and out, 7 seconds, completely seamless, frictionless. And on the right is Eataly, the Italian deli concept. And this, you can be here for 2 hours. You can chat to a butcher. You can choose from 100 different cheeses. And depending on whether it's Tuesday lunchtime or Saturday afternoon, I'm going to have a very different opinion of which one I want. And that's the point. We have to be able to offer our customers this choice. And we have to have the tools and the brands and the knowledge to be able to accommodate both at the same time. And that's the point. This is a continuum, right? This is not one or the other. Any one journey is not one or the other. Any one shopper is not one or the other. But it's about finding the moments and finding the technologies that help us sit to both sides of this continuum. And I want to go back to this again, this definition, because the one thing that's not on here, and we specifically leave out, is technology, right? This is not about shiny things. This is not about toys and just ruthlessly sticking, bunging a load of screens in a dealership, I'm sad to say, is not new retail, right? Technology is just the enabler, yeah? This is using online to sell, not selling online. Technology is just the enabler, it's the framing, it's the language. It's the thing that helps you get to the experience you want to deliver, and that's the important part. And I want to show you some of those now. Some of those digital enablers I think are relevant, and like I said, these are going to be from all over because new retail is all over. This is a really typical example. We talked about China to start off with. China are well ahead of us on this. This is a supermarket. Chinese grocery is actually really interesting. This is a Chinese supermarket by JD.com and Tencent. And the flashy thing is that they have self-driving shopping carts that will follow you around. If you put in your shopping list, they'll tell you the quickest route to get the products that you want. And you're probably looking at this. I show this to retailers, and all they see is the technology. They think, "Oh, that looks expensive. That looks tough to integrate. What if it bumps into someone?" But of course, that's not the point, right? It's not just about the shopping carts. That's the bit that looks good on the video. But they have completely seamless payments by facial recognition. They have screens in the store that tell you more information about the products you want. So this is not technology applied to an existing store. This is completely reimagining the store processes, assuming technology is a really integral part of that mix, because that's what the Chinese consumer expects. And to be honest, that's what the Western consumer expects as well. And to illustrate that point, the biggest tech company in the world, and probably the most important, you would think, well, they're e-commerce, right? Why physical retail is? I heard it was dying. Why would an e-commerce company be building physical sites? Actually, Amazon are building an incredible amount of physical sites. They're going hell for leather into physical retail because it's still so important. It's really important for delivering that experience. But what's really interesting is if you know Amazon.com, you know that the experience is basically identical, right? The UI, the journey. If you're buying jeans or lipstick or a flat screen TV or cat food, identical. That's how they're able to sell every product under the sun. But in the offline space, it's completely different. Every single physical location that they have is completely different. It serves a very particular purpose, whether it's grocery, convenience, books. And actually, interestingly, despite outside of the technology that they sell, the Kindles and the smart speakers, there's not really much tech in them that you can see. Amazon Go, the most technically advanced store in the world, uses cameras and RFID. You can't even see the technology. Amazon Books, they print out the user reviews from the website to display them. So this is not about just stuffing technology into the store. New retail is also about using digital to enable new journeys, to get to the point of customer need. Like I said, they're very complicated, these journeys, so we need to be able to put retail everywhere. So this is an example from Alibaba. This is a ladies' room in a Chinese mall with a magic mirror that lets you try on makeup virtually and then order it immediately from a vending machine that's also in a thing, and you pay on your phone. And again, this is not necessarily about, are we going to put car browsing in toilets? But it's the point that they've worked out where is that customer at the point of need, where are they susceptible to having us show retail to them, and then using technology to make that the case and making that seamless and just adding another little stop on the way. It's also about emphasizing the potential of humans, right? And all that expertise. This is not about digital being some faceless, optimized, streamlined website. Shops is a startup that links Chinese consumers with independent boutiques in Western countries. And they do this through live hosted stream shopping, right? So they have Chinese-speaking people walk around, show you all the products, and you can buy it straight through the app. So this is taking one store, one person, and scaling that to up to 400 million Chinese consumers shop on streaming, right? So this is about thinking all those good people you have in your dealerships, all that knowledge, all that face-to-face contact that you've got locked up in your stores. How can we scale that? How can we make that available? And this is a really good approach. And you might be thinking this is just QVC, right? And you're right, there's not that many new ideas, but the point is this is QVC for a generation that if it isn't on their smartphone screen, it doesn't exist. It's also changing the way that stores are built and the size of stores. So Nordstrom are a department store from the US. Department stores obviously, previously the largest physical retail spaces pretty much. They're now using technology to deliver a completely different store experience where actually they don't hold any stock. Every appointment at this store is a click and collect order. So you pre-order what you want to try on, they ship it into the store. It means the stores can be smaller, it means they can be closer to their customers. It can be in shopping centers, don't have to be out of town. And it means that they can double down on the things that actually make that experience fun and enjoyable. So they have these wonderful suites for trying things on. They will do alterations on site while you wait. So they're really thinking about what can we put online and what can we put in the physical space and how do we make sure both are balanced. The other thing I want to talk about is the direct-to-consumer wave. I know, again, some of you are probably moving more and more in this direction, thinking about going direct-to-consumer. It's a pattern we see over and over again in the industry. This is intentionally difficult to read, right? So since Dollar Shave Club was bought by Unilever for $1 billion, the direct-to-consumer industry has exploded, and pretty much every new retailer and brand we see is now using this model. And actually about 70 to 80% of them are also using subscription services. So again, you think about how this is putting the expectation in customers' mind that they're quite happy to deal direct with brands, and they're also quite happy, more and more things they're going to be getting on subscription, maybe not necessarily owning. And this is a really important lesson because if you are an existing brand that existed in both the kind of pre-D2C and post-D2C eras, you need to make some changes. And this is a really good example. This is Tide, the US fabric detergent. If you think about fabric detergent, that's very much a buying thing. No one really cares, unfortunately. So they're completely reconfiguring. This is a packet specifically designed for e-commerce. It ships through the post with no extra packaging. It's more concentrated, it's lighter, it's better for the planet. But 2 weeks ago, they also announced that they would be opening 2,000 dry cleaning locations across America and putting lockers in apartment buildings and university halls in 8 cities that you can pop your laundry in, it disappears, comes back 2 days later, it's all washed for you. So if you think about, this is big brands not just relying on the product anymore, but thinking about how can they be a service provider? How can they offer more value? If I think about those car makers, how can we move more to a service offering, not just a product offering, where, if everyone has the same electric engine, we're going to need a slightly different way of differentiating ourselves. Personalization is massive, and I know, again, this is hand in hand with the D2C. Right? Everything we experience online is about personalization. It's about making customers feel part of that process. If we think about the configurator, this is about getting a product that feels unique to me. And all of these brands, I think, they demonstrate that it might be really hard. You might not know where to start. You might not have that skill set. I think Nike approached it really well. This was about taking data that they already have. In this case, they used all of the purchases of local shoppers. When they were building their new store in LA, they looked at what people in LA tend to buy online, and then that's how they worked out what products they should stock in the store. So they're taking an online insight that they have, and they're using that to dictate the physical experience. So these things, sell online, not online to sell, not selling online. It's also about involving customers in that process, making it fun and enjoyable and an experience. So this is an Australian lipstick brand, and you can book an appointment with them, and for about 30 quid, they will let you make your own lipstick. So you pick your pigments, your base, you pick your own color, you can mix in scents and flavors. And then at the end, they have you kiss the wall and sign your name, and you pick your own color. And this is all about, exposing the process to the customer, making it really fun and exciting, because this is, again, a pretty boring product. But by bringing the customer along, by really making that personalization journey a big part of the sales process, it really, really boosts the engagement, really elevates it. If you're not a lipstick fan, let's talk about whiskey. This is a bourbon brand in America. And so they tried to help customers understand, because bourbon's actually quite a complicated process, right? And we're generally seeing this sort of move towards transparency. So they put up a website that sort of talked customers through the whiskey bourbon brewing process, step by step. And they could pick at each stage various different things. So from the mixture of crops that went into the product to where it sits in the warehouse, apparently that makes a difference. It's colder up top, warmer down below, to how long you want it to age for. I mean, if you think you have long delivery times, try waiting 16 years for a customized product. And this was about kind of showing customers the process and educating them, using online to do so. But what was really interesting is they looked at the data behind this, and it turned out that the majority of customers were actually picking the exact same set of conditions. They were doing the same whiskey. So they released it. They called it Create Your Perfect Bourbon. And they release it, and every year they release the most popular setup of the configurators. They're just taking information they had. And this enables them to stay strong as a brand. Because if your brand is just whatever your customer wants it to be, have you really got a brand? Whereas this is a nice way of keeping those customers happy, but making sure you still have an opinion. And we see this with Nike. They released a shoe last year where you could customize it in terms of what colors you wanted to. They gave you these spray paint templates, and you could spray your own swoosh on your Nike thing. But of course, is a Nike shoe still a Nike shoe if it doesn't have a swoosh on it? No. So that's why they give you these brand templates. They're controlling the experience. And that's really important. It's how do you make sure that your brand comes through if you're getting more and more modular? The bigger picture, I think, is about transparency. I think it's about understanding how do we communicate to customers our purpose, and how do we make sure that we've got, that we're meeting expectations for information. If we go back to Alibaba, Jack Ma's supermarket in China, you can scan any product inside the store, and it will tell you not only when it was harvested, but who harvested it. How did it get to my shelves? Can I see the safety certificate of the farmer, all on my mobile phone? And more industries are going to have this level of transparency, show this level of detail to the customer. And of course, because everything is blended, well, if I can get this from Tesco, then why can I not get it from my car manufacturer? Why can I not see the supply chain? Why do I not know who is involved in this? And it's more than that, right? It's about what the message you have for customers is. Because obviously, auto and the environment are pretty closely linked. And I want to call out Patagonia. So they're an outdoor wear brand from the US. And they, in the 90s, they were quite revolutionary, because they were the first really to come up with a mission statement that was based on the environment. So they said, build the best product, absolutely, but cause no harm and use business to implement solutions to the environmental crisis. Right? So this was pretty groundbreaking. A lot of companies now have some variation of this in their statement. Last year, they changed their mind. They said, well, actually, that's not good enough anymore. Last year, they changed it. We're in business to save our home planet. And I saw their CEO speak in January, and she said, look, it's not just good enough anymore to not do harm. We actually have to actively do good in the world, and that's what customers want. And in fact, some really interesting stats about how this factors into purchase decisions, and not just the environment, but social issues in general. People want their brands to stand for something, and they want you to show that in the retail. And this is all about giving customers what they expect. And they put their money where their mouth is, right? They built a website that connects people to causes, so using online to link people to real-world activities. When Donald Trump gave their business a $10 million tax cut, they just immediately donated it to charity. And they actively endorsed politicians who ran on environmental issues. So they're really standing behind this. And so hopefully I've shown you that the world of retail is a big one, and that's both good and bad. Right? We know that customer expectations have completely changed, and unfortunately will continue to change at probably a faster pace. And therefore you need to be aware of what's driving those expectations outside of your sector. Hopefully you can learn, because I think you're very much on the start of your journey, and luckily there's other bits of retail that are further down. So you can certainly learn from those lessons and hopefully not avoid and repeat those mistakes. But just as a reminder, if I leave you with one thing, it's this: fun when you want it to be, fast when you don't. Because that's what your customer wants, right? That's how she interacts with your brand. That's who your competitors are, and that's the journeys that she wants to take. Thank you very much.
Alex, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. That's set us on the first part of our journey to understand the customer. Now, who has some questions for Alex? It's question time. Anybody have a question? Well, I've got a first question for you, Alex. So you spend a lot of time advising companies, boardrooms, decision makers in brands and businesses.
Absolutely, yeah.
What attitudes do you think many of the companies that you use as examples have in common?
That's a good question. I think we're quite lucky with a lot of the companies we have, because they've recognized the need to change. They know that, but I think 5-10 years ago, maybe heads were in the sand a bit. Now everyone knows they need to change. They're just not sure what that change looks like. And that, I think, is much more freeing, and maybe that's a sentiment you share. I think the other thing is they're prepared to look outside. They're prepared to go against what their competition is doing and not necessarily just follow. And they're prepared to actually do it and get out there and get this stuff into stores and test it and learn from it. If you take 2 years to get something to market, it's 18 months out of date. So, you have to be able to kind of move quick and maybe not get too bogged down in the no's. I think there's more of a, it's thinking about the possibilities, not thinking about all the ways it could go wrong.
We have a question from the front. Could you state your name?
I'm Rachel from Whatcar.
Hello.
It was really interesting seeing that list of brands on the wall. Do you think companies that are starting up and disrupting in a market have an advantage over those that are looking to change? So, to your point, our companies know they need to change.
Yeah.
And you provided lots of examples where companies have sought to change,
yeah.
but it's felt perhaps a little bit more novelty for
Yeah.
them. Tide is an example of that, than perhaps those big disruptive brands who have nothing to lose.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty much the main difference. They don't have anything to lose. They don't have any, they don't have all of the legacy that slows them down. They don't have both the physical trappings of that, but also the thinking that, well, we've done this for 25 years. We know what we're doing. They come at it with just a dream and a will to change, and they can very quickly pivot when something doesn't work out. But what they don't have is 150 years of heritage. They don't have as much brand equity. They don't have as much money. I think there's a bit of a perception that outside of Amazon and co, who have essentially infinite money, unfortunately, it's very hard to get funding for stuff. It's not. So if you've got the capital and you've got the brand, really the only thing you need is the mindset change and the ideas, and those, I would say, are the easier bits.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Brian McCarthy, Golden Store. What do you think is the easiest step for those classic retailers, the sort of low-hanging fruit to get started on that journey towards new retail?
There's almost always lots. I think that actually the challenge often comes from knowing what not to do, rather than, everyone's got 1,000 ideas they want to get in place. It's actually working out the process to kind of trim that down. The biggest thing for me really is just really rethinking the customer and really rethinking what that customer thinks about, what that journey is. Maybe going back if you've got sort of well-worn personas or journeys, and saying, okay, but let's pretend we didn't have that, and let's start again, and maybe let's deliberately change that, and then coming up with the solutions that would fit those new things and seeing how that flies. I think we tend to say, well, you want to look at the market, you want to look at the innovation that's really happening, because the market knows more than you do about what your customers want. So I think, again, the easiest thing really is just to accept. It's like quitting smoking. It's accepting you have a problem, and then you can work out how to go from there. I think that's the first best step.
Thank you for your question. Do we have any more questions? Well, I've got one more for you.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about different expectations, but again, from all of the customers, clients that you work with, which expectation do you think is the one which is least recognized and most overlooked? Oh. I'm trying to give you easy questions.
Yeah, no, I know. It's really super easy, thanks. Most overlooked. I think there's an interesting thing about choice. I think there is, people are surprised at how willing customers are to let brands make decisions for them. There's still, one of the old roles of brand is that I didn't have to think about which washing detergent to buy because Tide can afford, television ads, so they're probably the best ones. And we sort of lost that, and because everything is now, well, what do you want? What can we do for you? And actually, I think people are, as long as you guide them along the way, I think they're quite happy for you to tell them, either what to do, what to buy, because they need help. They've got so much choice now. But also, they're happy for you to say, look, this is actually the way that we do things now. This is a new process, and I'm going to hold your hand, but don't be scared about it. Just because it's the internet doesn't mean it's scary. So I think you'd be surprised at how quickly, as long as the brands are doing it in the right way, they adapt to the new way of things being done, and they'll follow your recommendations as a brand.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Alex. Follow-up question here. I think I know this person. Mr. Astor.
Thanks, Headley. Just building on that one, Apple, Amazon, and Salesforce are all developing their own personal AIs, which potentially will disintermediate what you've just said. What do you think the role is of AI and a personalised AI assistant? Because they're all starting to pilot this.
Yeah. How long have you got? Can we run for the rest of the day?
Yeah. Could only give you easy questions.
Yeah. I mean, AI is both an incredible game, like massive, as big as software and the internet has been. I think AI will be. At the same time, it is also the least understood. Currently, it's the magic dust where you go, how do you solve this problem? I'll just throw some AI at it. That'll work it out. I think we are going to see, I'm not going to shop for beans anymore, right? The algorithm, my personal assistant, whatever it is, that's going to do that for me. It knows what I like. I can't see any point where someone's going to phone up and say, can you order me a car? I don't care which one. I think we still, as long as the brand is doing a good enough job of making me care about that thing, I find it hard to believe we'll just delegate all of that over to the robots.
Now, I'm really pleased that you asked that question, because we're going to answer it a little bit later, actually, because we're going to look at how we think. And I think one of the answers to that question, Toby, is how our brains work. But we're going to look at that in session 3. Alex, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, everyone.
For a round of applause for Alex. Now, next up, to answer the next part of our exam question is Nick King, Director of Insights from Auto Trader. And what we're going to do now is we're going to say, well, we've talked about the new expectations of the customer, but Nick is going to look at, therefore, how do we meet those expectations using digital. Nick is a much in-demand speaker. Many of you will have heard Nick speak before. He's a charismatic entertaining
No
and
pressure.
highly knowledgeable. But did you know he was a rock star?
God.
And that's why Nick is slightly deaf. So when you ask your question, you're going to need to speak up. Nick, the rock star.
Well, thanks very much. No pressure. Brilliant. Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, very good. Lovely to be here. X and was long time ago. So lovely. Thanks, Headley. I think I got this in the wrong way. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me back. It's lovely to be here. So yes. Nick King, consumer psychologist, been in marketing research for 30 odd years. Been at Automotive for 12. I am fascinated by people, by technology, and a long time ago I was in a band. Used to be one of the first indie bands in the UK. Played guitar. Had a wall of Marshall amps here. Blown my ears away, and I'm now stone deaf. And this ear doesn't work. This ear has tinnitus. And if we do have questions, please shout. Not straight away, but please do shout. So, fantastic presentation, Alex. And thank you, Headley. And I'm going to agree with what you've talked about. I'm just going to try and expand on it as well. I'm having trouble with my mic. Sorry, got it working now? Perfect. There we are. Great. I'd like to talk about, actually, how we bring this even further, more relevant to us as well, on digital excellence. And I think digital excellence is really an easier, more enjoyable purchase journey. Digital excellence for anything you're selling is this. If it's superb, you've created an easier, more enjoyable purchase journey, no matter what you're buying or selling. For the last 11 years, we have run something which was called the Click Awards. It's now called the Retailer Awards. We've got a whole load of car buyers, users to rate websites for usability, ease of access, how good they are. And we called this excellence. And it's changed and evolved over time. Thousands of people take part. Thousands of consumers take part. This gives us a good access point into actually what and how the world has changed. But before we get there, I just want to set the scene a bit, because we are living through uncertain times. I'm afraid I've got to mention Brexit. Someone has to, sorry. But yeah. It is tough. It is confusing, especially with what's going on at the moment. It is tough. It is a bit confusing. We're all a bit unsure. But we are sure, technologically. When I see a site now, I know and I expect it to be easy. I expect it to be familiar. When we started the Click Awards, which are now called Retailer Awards, those Click Awards, what won an award 5-6 years ago was a site which would load on a mobile site. Oh, they had a mobile. Oh, that's excellent. It's on a mobile. Brilliant. It loaded quickly. Oh, that's excellent. In fact, no, that isn't excellent anymore. That's a hygiene factor. When I go on a site now, I expect it to be familiar. It's got to be familiar. It's got to be easy. And in fact, it's got to make me happy. If it makes me happy, no matter where I am, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go often. I'm going to tell my friends. The most powerful advertising method ever is you telling someone else about somewhere you've just been, becoming an advocate. And that's what a good site should do. Because we do live, as we've already heard, so eloquently from Alex, in a complex digital world. It's super complex. We are subjected today as humans to around about 10,000 branded images a day. 10,000 branded images. They're all around us now as we see them. 10,000 branded images fighting for your attention. That's the world we live in today. If you've got 2 years left on your finance deal as a car buyer, in those 2 years, you will see 7.4 million branded images. As a marketeer, you are one of those trying to fight for my attention, and it's bloody difficult to fight through that. Combine this with the fact that our brains are limited. We have our brains are supercomputers. They're amazing things. And this well-known psychologist, Daniel Levitin, says our brains are amazing, but they are limited. There's a limited number of things they can do before they go, stop, I can't do anything else. I get limited. We can do circa 35,000 decisions in a day. Sounds like a lot. It is a lot. Before we go, that's it, I can't do anymore. But when you consider one of those decisions is how much toothpaste to squeeze out of the tube in the morning. Another decision is when to stop squeezing the toothpaste tube. Another decision is when to start brushing your teeth. That's 3 decisions. You haven't done anything yet apart from begin to start brushing your teeth. You'll soon run out of decisions. You've only got 35,000. You haven't run a business yet. So we can run out of decisions. And suddenly so we are limited. And you're seeing 10,000 branded images all the time. This top fuel dragster will go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 0.9 of a second, which is that fast. And our brains can process an image in 0.9 of a second, that fast. And we are seeing 10,000 images a day. So as a marketeer today, your challenge is cutting through that. What a challenge. This isn't just a cute picture of a Labrador puppy. Well, it is. I used to have a Labrador, chocolate Labrador called Max. This represents Andrex toilet paper. If we were all marketeers for Andrex toilet paper, we would be spending 40 hours a week thinking about toilet paper. Now, I won't spend 40 hours of my life thinking about toilet paper, and I don't expect you to. But if we were marketeers, we would do. Trouble is, I've got 9,999 other things fighting for my attention. So how do I cut through this quagmire of marketing messages? Maybe I'll come up with something like this. This is a dash button. You may have seen these. They're on Amazon. If you're lucky enough or unlucky enough to have babies, you might have a child with nappies, and you've got the changing table, and you're running out of nappies. You can have one of these physical buttons which syncs through Bluetooth to your Amazon Prime account. You press the button, you're running out of nappies, and oh my God, press the button, and by 11 hours later, a pack of Huggies arrives. Brilliant, pack of Huggies. 12 hours later, brilliant, they arrive the next day. Fantastic, you're, phew, well, I'm not going to run out of nappies, fantastic. They make these dash buttons for Nescafe, so you can have coffee arrives tomorrow, 12 hours later, brilliant. You can get them for Heineken beer, fantastic, the beer arrives tomorrow. You can get them for Sillet Bang, get your Sillet Bang tomorrow. You can get them for Durex. Arguably, you want them a bit quicker than 11 hours. So obviously, this isn't going to work for cars, no, but it's a way of cutting through this quagmire of marketing challenge. I'm not having a pop at any manufacturer today, but if I want to buy a BMW X2, I'm looking for a BMW X2 as a consumer, as a punter. Look at the different types and models. So I'm looking to buy a BMW X2. What BMW have had to build is something down here. You can't see it at the back, but it's called an automatic conflict assistant. It's so complex. There's so many different variants. They've had to build something saying, this is an automatic conflict assistant. Don't worry, it's complicated, but don't worry, yeah, it's all right, you'll find the right thing. So it is complex. And arguably, that's not a great experience for me as the consumer. What this plays in is the basic psychological premise of the primacy effect. Really simple to get your head around. And it's a really simple psychological effect. And it simply means that the first thing that happens in any relationship has a direct impact on how the rest of that relationship will go. Really easy example is if imagine you walk into a restaurant or bar and someone is rude to you or a bit offish, that will get you back up and you think, ugh, and that could piss you off for the rest of that meal. That's the primacy effect. So the first thing you see has a direct impact. So if you're looking at something online, and of course we know you spend 14, 15 hours researching your car online, and it's a bad image, a bad description, the price is wrong, anything is wrong, that turns you off. Primacy effect. So it's critical to get it right straight away. It's really, really important. In that research we did, in our Click Awards, Retailer Awards, 5,074 car buyers are voting and looking at websites. And here's some feedback. If their website is an insight into how their company is run, I'd run a mile. Tragic, terrifying, appalling. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you who this is, but that's obviously a damning statement. Never visited the physical site due to the confusing website. How can I make a choice if I can't see cars and quality of the dealership in one place? Terrible, frightening, obviously really bad news. We know how important on and offline are working together. Seamless, blended retail. It's one thing. This is how important it is. So perception matters, clearly. Really simple study. Identical chocolate brownies were given to 3 different groups. The only difference was how they were given. The first group were given the chocolate brownie on a paper napkin, the second group on a paper plate, third group on a bone china plate. Then the groups were asked, rate the chocolate brownie, and then say how much you'd be prepared to pay for it. The first group who got the chocolate brownie on a paper napkin What do you think of the chocolate brownie? Oh, it was okay. I'd pay 50p for it. Second group, identical chocolate brownie, paper plate. It was good. I'd pay 75p. Third group, identical chocolate brownie. They got it on a bone china plate. That's the only difference. I thought it was excellent. I'd pay £1.50. Amazing. 3 times the value of the product. The only difference was it was on a bone china plate. That's the value of perception, primacy effect. That's the value of UX. Wow, you really can make a difference. Actually, on that, is there any difference really between hieroglyphics and emojis? 4,000 years of evolution. We've come bloody nowhere. There's no difference. In fact, can you find the poo symbol? There probably is one. I can't see it. But actually, maybe that's the only difference. But yeah, no, so, because actually it's simple, it's easy. And actually, when you think about psychology, the reason this works is it's simple. And actually, as Alex so beautifully put it, throwing technology at something isn't the answer, it's actually making it easy. When you make it easy, you get to the lowest common denominator, and we all go, yeah, I'll use that now. So how do brands deliver an enjoyable online experience today? We took all that listening, all those learnings, thought about the world, the economy, what's going wrong today, all the different social impacts, and actually we come up with 5 key needs, and they are these: choice, experience, confidence, enrichment, and fairness. They're not what you may think. They're not the obvious ones. Choice. It's not about quantity. It's about providing people with a clear path through complexity. If you can make it simple and easy for me, you're going to win. Experience is engaging people in a way that feels human, because we are human beings. Digital can feel scary. If you can make me feel, I like dealing with human beings. If you can make it feel human, then you're going to interact. Confidence, reassure me it's safe to stop searching. Trust and transparency, Alex already mentioned it. Enrichment, go the extra mile, make me feel inspired. And fairness, build on trust. What do you want me to feel about your brand as I move away from you? So what we've done is, rather than try and reinvent the wheel, let's look at what other brands do. Let's steal from the best. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Let's look at what other great companies have done as examples. So that's what we've done. Brands you already know and use. First one, and bear in mind, of course, in our industry, of course, we're struggling because there's an element of trust. People still don't trust the car dealer, the retailer. It's a bit like, we're still trying to push water uphill. So it's going to be a bit hard for us. So it's tough. So, choice, providing people with a clear path through complexity. Who's doing that well at the moment? An example, Rightmove. Rightmove, the aggregator, the estate agent aggregator. What do they do to provide a clear path? So one of the things you want to do, you look to buy a house or flat, and you've got kids. I want to make sure it's near a school. It's got to be near a school. It's got to be within a mile of a school, so I'm in the catchment area. So you find the school, and then on Rightmove, you can draw a line around 1 mile radius of that school and find all the houses that are within the catchment area. Brilliant, simple, yeah, easy. Virgin Trains, nice and simple. It's maybe not, doesn't come to your mind straight away as being, oh, yeah, this is really obvious as a site that's nice and easy, but actually, it's everything I need to do. It's updated, it's easy to use. People voted for this, it's nice and simple to use. This is a screenshot of my iPhone. You may have seen me present this last time, if anyone was here in the room, but this genuinely is my iPhone. And I really was in a band. I really was. And these Swiffers, these are things I buy all the time. These are not some weird sexual thing. These are dusters. They're things you use to clean. You can't buy them in Waitrose. They're fantastic to clean guitars. With one tap here, a box of Swiffers arrives tomorrow. With one tap here, 3 sets of 9 to 42 Ernie Ball electric guitar strings arrives tomorrow. Amazon has 32 million circa products for sale. That will give me choice paralysis if I saw 32 million products in a shop, but actually Amazon has made their shop come to me. Fantastic. Brilliant. Made it simple. They provide a clear path through that complexity. More isn't equal to better. It's about curation and guided navigation. Make it easy. Help me know I made the right choice. Can we bring that into our automotive life? Of course we can. Can we take elements of that into our world? So experience, engage with people in a way that feels human, because we are humans. We like to feel human. Who's doing this? Dulux. Dulux, the paint store. Arguably not the first sight that should spring to mind. What Dulux do? You want to paint your house. They come up with lots of ideas, lots of different colour washes and ideas. This is what rooms could look like with different colours. That's quite good. When you want to paint your house, you might have to go and buy those testers. And you've got a little tester. Actually, what Dulux do brilliantly is they give you an app. I'm going to try and demonstrate it for you. It's absolutely genius. You get the app. Here we are, Dulux app. And you say, I want to check, and you can see the Dulux app, and you choose a colour. I'm going to go orange, and you hold the app over your, I'll make it work, visualise, don't crash, and, ooh, don't crash, bollocks. Never demonstrate technology. Is it going to work? No. Yes. You see it go orange? You actually it colours the wall the colour you've chosen. Genius! You haven't got to buy a tester. You can actually do it on your phone. Amazing. Amazing. That is using technology to make it work. Fantastic. Amazon, of course. People who bought this also bought this. They made it, they sort of making it feel humanised. My little local shop is a Nissa little supermarket, and I go there on Saturdays after I've done my asthmatic, pathetic jog at 7:30 in the morning, and I turn up there to buy the Telegraph, because it's got the motoring section when I buy it on Saturdays, and Latesh, who works there, goes, hello, Mr. Nick. I don't know why he calls him Mr. Nick, but he always does. I go, hello, Latesh. Hi, Mr. Nick. He goes, hello. You bought mangoes last week? I said, yes. He said, Mrs. Nick likes the pink Prosecco. Yes. I've got some new ones in. Great. Do you want some? Yes, please. So I buy a pink Prosecco at 7:30 on a Saturday morning, because it's human touch. I like him. And then on Sunday, I go back to get the Sunday Times, because that's got the driving section in. I go, hi, Latesh. Hi, Mr. Nick. How's Mrs. Nick? She's fine. Did you like the pink Prosecco? Yes. Here's 2 bottles. Thanks very much. When do you buy pink Prosecco on a Sunday morning? You do, because it's a human touch. We like the human touch, and that's why humans like humans. And if you can bring that human touch in, then you're going to win. So engage with people in a way that feels human. Third way is confidence. Reassure people that it's safe to stop searching. So who's doing this? Not the site you may have thought of, Screwfix. You've got a problem with your boiler. I had a problem with my Honeywell controller on my boiler. It froze. One morning, I woke up 3 in the morning, heating's on. Brilliant. Not brilliant. Go downstairs, and the little Honeywell controller is just lit up with no numbers, just green light. Oh, Christ, it's obviously broken. So I unplug it, phone up the plumbers. They say, yes, I think the Honeywell controller's broken. Right, okay. Can I get someone to come in? Yes, they're coming in 4 days' time. Great. Not great. It's around Christmas. I know it's the Honeywell controller. I said, will they have one in the van? No. Okay. Damn. I better go and buy one then. So I go to Screwfix. I don't want to go to Screwfix. I want to go to Homebase. Walk around miles and miles of stores, not knowing what. So I go to Screwfix, and I notice on Screwfix they've got this, and it says click and collect in as little as 1 minute. Ooh, brilliant. So I'm in the car park outside Screwfix on that phone, looking for my Honeywell controller. I say, oh, they've got one here. Yeah, £98.50. All right, well, okay. Order it. Walk in, pay for it, get out the car, walk about this far into the door, open the door, say, well, I've just ordered this. They go, there we are, thanks very much, here's your box. It was about 1 minute, 5 seconds. Unbelievable, brilliant system. Got back, phoned the plumbers, got the Honeywell controller. They said, yeah, okay, brilliant, how much do you pay for it? £98.50. They said, well, we'd have charged you 280 quid. Brilliant, quid's in. Anyway, so this is making me feel good, because it's like, it works. It's simple, it's easy. It's an ugly system, but it's giving me confidence. They showed me how to make things fit. They give you ideas and guides. If anyone, hands up who commutes here on the train or tube, sometimes. Hands up who uses this site. I use this 4 times a day, 6 times a day. I hate commuting. I love this site. It's awful. I don't want to like commuting, but I love this site because it tells me when my train's delayed, train's coming late. A brilliant example of making on and offline working together. It gives me confidence. Fourth is enrichment. Go the extra mile. Excite and inspire people. Who does that? John Lewis. I'm so horribly middle class, it's my favourite shop. I go to the shop, go to Blue Water with my wife, Obviously, look around all the car bits first. Go to Rockar, have a good nose, and Tesla, have a good nose, and then you have other pop-ups. And then I spend the rest of the time looking at tellies in John Lewis, because it's a nice place to be. And then I go online and buy something on John Lewis, because it's a nice place to be. It's nice, it's uncluttered, it's safe, I feel never knowingly undersold. Other people who bought this also bought this. Here's things which go together. It's just a nice, safe environment. It's a nice place to be. Expert reviews. Anyone been on booking.com? What a brilliant site. What an amazing site. What they do is they play with your scarcity bias. There's loads of other people looking at this. There's loads. If you look careful, you might miss out. Scarcity bias, fantastic. Expedia have been playing with this. EasyJet have been playing with this. Look out. People are looking at this seat. You might miss out. You might miss out. Scarcity bias, fantastic. But they also have fantastic pictures, fantastic images, descriptions, testimonials, ratings, reviews. Brilliant, brilliant site. Gives you real enrichment. And then last year, I saw this ad. I can hear it.
And now, for your final memory challenge, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
This morning, you created an online banking password. What is it?
Oh, dear. Okay. It's mine, so I'll remember it. I mean, it was today. I can see it. Just see it. No, that's the old one. Muffins. No, that's not her name. Not anymore. It was Windbreaker. No, it's. I bet that one you spelled it backwards. It was today. Like cat names. No. I'm gonna. I still have time. Plenty of time.
Even if I know it's old now, it's still cool though, isn't it? It's just like, oh yeah, it's still cool. I know, Alex, you mentioned it as well. Facebook paying by face, it's just bloody cool. That is, I just think that's really cool. So yeah, enrichment, go the extra mile, do something that makes me go, oh wow, yeah, blimey. The limitations physical environments have on your forecourt do not apply. The digital site can be anything you want. It really can. You can go the extra mile, do something amazing. Be special. And finally, fairness. How do you want people to think about you when they're not with you? What does your brand say about you? What is your brand? So when you go on Hive, for example, Hive is all about caring for the environment. People who work at Hive are probably decent people who care about the environment. It's environmentally friendly, it's green, caring, ecological. People who work at IKEA, probably similar. They're good, they're kind, they care for people, they care for the trees. There's good people. People who work at the Body Shop care for animals. You know, Anita Roddick, that's it, who never tested on animals. They're nice, kind people. That's what people. So what do people think about you? What do you want people to think about you when they're not on your site, at your dealership, at your company? Building belief. So if you do all those 5 things, that really creates digital excellence. And if you create digital excellence, you create a fantastic blended experience. So use online to sell, not sell online. Because that's what our opportunity, that's what our industry really is. It gives us a real opportunity to shine. Then, you get an easier, more enjoyable purchase journey for whatever you're selling, hopefully particularly automotive. Thank you very much for listening.
So now we know more about how you spend your weekends, Nick.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Your wife is an alcoholic, but you made her that.
Yes, my fault. Exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's no pink Prosecco at your corner shop.
No.
What a kind husband. do you have anything left on Valentine's Day to offer?
No, what do I get now?
do
Exactly.
you-
Yes, I'm ruined, aren't I? Yes.
Okay, so other than romantic questions for Nick, that was absolutely brilliant. Not only thought-provoking, but humorous and inspiring. Questions?
Yeah.
You give some really positive examples of what online retailers are doing particularly well. Who and what do you think are doing it particularly bad?
Oh, blimey. Who or what are doing it particularly bad? Oh, good question. Good question. Without naming names, I can't name names. What they're doing is particularly bad. Yes, I think. Okay, yeah. So the classic thing to do, particularly bad, is ignoring you, the customer, ignoring me, the customer. Slow, delay, ignore, and being rude. Yeah, which all sounds blindingly obvious, but I have over the last 8 years, I've mystery shopped circa 3,400 car dealerships. And the last ones I mystery shopped were last year. And I would search for a car, I'd find a car, and send an email or a voicemail and just record how long it took them to get back to me and how they responded. And one of the responses, I won't say who it was I use a fake name, it was Charlie. So, damn, I've given it away now, but it was dear Charlie. It was, hi Charlie. One was, sorry, the car is now sold, regards, Dave. Yeah, you haven't got any more cars. It's like, sorry, the car's sold. Well, this is a franchise. Sorry, the car's now sold. Another response was, it's genuine, and I could actually show you this one. Dear Charlie, our salesman's car hasn't arrived, so we are using this car. He is using this car for the next 3 months. Please give us a call in 4 months' time when he's stopped using it. Genuinely, kind regards, whatever it was. It's like, oh, yeah, really amazing. So, yeah, amazingly getting it wrong. So it's the assumption that I've made contact with you and that you're prepared to wait, and that I will be prepared to wait. So not assuming that, so if I've made contact with you in today's world, I'm hot, you should grab me, and you should make the most of me. So that's an example of that's a way of getting it wrong massively. So grab me. If I've made contact with you today, I am hot, and that you should make the most of me as an e-commerce person. Contact, yes. Thank you.
Loved it. Great. Thank you for the very kind words. I think what was interesting is a lot of those examples are kind of sort of online centric. I'm interested how you think it changes. Obviously, a lot of online uses is in a store or in the real world, and how do those principles, I guess, evolve when you've also got that kind of like the Screwfix is a great example. Are there any more kind of that crossover?
Yes, yes. I suppose off the top of my head, examples of crossovers. Can't think straight away. Examples of crossovers.
I suppose kind of best practice.
Yes, I suppose it's because it is very much blended retail, and we've got Ian in the room sat next to you, who was a founder of blended retail with VW. It was very much your word, wasn't it? Actually, or was it your word? No, we claim it. It's a good one, but things just have to work together. You do have to. So the ideal nirvana is, you find something online. You rock up at the dealership, and you are greeted as if it's a singular transaction. So what would be ideal is, this doesn't happen yet, although some people have tried this with automated number plate recognition. You put your details in to do a valuation of your part exchange and so the number plate is in the system. You drive up in the car, and that car is recognised at the dealership, and it goes, aha, this person was looking at that car. It recognises it, and as you drive in, it goes, welcome, Mr. King, or Nick, or whoever you're please park over here. The car you were looking at is over here. And a salesman person comes out to greet you and goes, Mr. King, welcome. The car you were looking at is over here. Let me take you to it. You go, oh, blimey, it's this seamless thing. And suddenly you're sat in the car you were looking at, and oh, blimey. And you're sort of buying it because it's all happened. No one's actually nailed that yet, but why shouldn't that happen? Wouldn't that be brilliant? Wouldn't that because it could happen. Why couldn't that happen? I suppose you'd have to be in the car you were valuing, but there's a high propensity that you probably are in the car that you were valuing. So that could happen. That could be the next stage that's where AI could cut in.
Well, that's a neat segue to a question I got for you, which is, so what happens between the great intentions and, everybody's been to many of these websites, and it is, it's sort of the bleeding obvious. So what happens between the good intention and then the execution, which is typically fairly underwhelming?
Yeah.
Why? Why does that happen?
So
thousands of hours of intelligent people.
So
and we end up with
it could be not invented here. One reason not invented here. We've always done it this way. I don't like change. Those are three killer things. I don't want to change. I've always done it this way. How am I going to measure it? How am I going to put it in place? And actually, Alex and I were saying earlier when we were chatting, it's IT. It's an IT thing. I'm a car dealership. I'm not an IT thing. The reason we were saying Amazon have been so successful is because they're an IT company that are selling in retail. They're not a retailer adding on IT. They've had to, it's bolting on something which is intrinsically fairly scary. It's like, oh, how do we do this? I need my IT consultant to make it work.
But their vocabulary is technology and data and analysis, isn't it?
Yes, that's right, and it's scary, and you're talking to people, and I've always said that, and unfortunately for some people, when we talk about how do we, so at Autotrader, we talk about data all the time, we say, and you can use data to enhance your business. And everyone goes, oh no, scary, I don't want to talk about data and spreadsheets, it's frightening. No, it isn't, it's not frightening. It's only frightening because it's the word data. It's like, you get a fear of maths. I was told I was rubbish at maths at school. No, you weren't. It's just because some teacher said you were poor at maths at school. Nothing scary about maths until you put it into practice. And when you put it into practice and you see the value, you go, oh yeah, it makes sense. Of course it makes sense. You just got to put it into practice. That's the challenge. A lot of the car dealers and the retailers we deal with are actually scared of this technology. So you've got to make it easy for them, make it useful for them, and then they go, oh right, I see. Again, it goes back to make it easy. Difficult to make things easy, though. That's the challenge. It's a bit like when Apple launched the iPod. At the same time, there was the AMG B-Tech MP3 player launches with 42 megabits of sound or quality and gigabytes of power, and it was the same price, and it was called the AMG PTEK thingy. And you think, and then the iPod launches, it says 1,000 songs in your pocket. You go, oh, it's got less processing power, but it puts 1,000 songs in my pocket. Oh yeah, right. I understand that. Lowest common denominator, I get that. I don't actually care. It's got 8 megabits of whatever. It's got 1,000 songs. Great. When you get it to the lowest common denominator, everyone goes, oh yeah, I get it. Maybe that's what we need to do. We need to remove some of the complexity, remove the confusion, get it down to the lowest common denominator, and it's not easy to do that. The genius is in the strap line, is in the copywriting, and then we go, then it gets mass adoption. Oh, got a chance.
Great. Nick, on those last words of wisdom, thank you very much indeed.
Great. Oh, thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
So it's now refreshment and wine time. But before we go, I just wanted to talk about the next session. So the next session, when you come back, we're going to take this idea of the experience and the expectations, and we're going to explore that in looking at some really important moments that matter within the automotive customer journey. And we're going to look at what's going on in the mind of the customer from a psychological point of view, which is driving those expectations. So see you back in 30 minutes. Thank you. Well, welcome back from the break. The next two sessions are really practical and looking at the applications of some of the things that we've talked about in the first half of the afternoon. The title of this session is about winning the moments that matter when using online to sell in automotive. And as many of you know, at Summit, we've been involved in automotive and the transformation in using online to sell over the last 6 years. And previous to that, obviously, we've worked in retail for the last 18. And what's clear is that there are these moments that matter, which is a well-used phrase. The question is, what are the moments that matter, and how important are they, and how can you use online? And in the next half an hour, what we want to do is we've mapped around 60 moments that matter in automotive in the buying process. In the next half an hour, we want to take 6 of those and have a deep look at these 6 moments. And I'm delighted to welcome on stage Thomas Hans. Thomas and I have worked together for about 16 years. Thomas was head of e-commerce for Summit and built many customer journeys using online for retailers. And in the last 5 years has been at the heart of building technology products for our automotive clients and is now in charge of our automotive product. So Thomas is going to share his wisdom and thoughts on those moments and how we're using online. And I'm even more delighted to welcome the team from Innovation Bubble. It isn't fair, but it's true. So, and truth is at the heart of customer expectations. So, but why have we asked Innovation Bubble? Because one of the really important things that we realize that when people implement technology projects, really, if you don't understand what's going on in the mind of the customer, the project's finished from the moment you even start. And we've worked very successfully with Innovation Bubble to help us understand the mind of the customer. So Katerina and Lila are going to share some of their insights around these moments as we walk through them. They're also responsible for the wonderful postcard on your seat. And I'd like Katerina and Lila to introduce Innovation Bubble, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are behind these cards. I'm sure you all see the 2 dancers on this card. So basically, we bring a different perspective when we work with clients. Our main aim is to help clients to understand customer or employee behavior. Given we are a team of psychologists, it's all bringing answers to the why question. So I'm sure most of you and many other people can tell you what is happening, when it is happening, where is it happening in the customer journey, but many cannot actually answer the question, why is it happening? What drives your customer behavior? What are the underlying behavioral explanations for it? What are the motivations of your customer engagement or not? And that's where we come in and help decipher these behaviors that you can see in your customer decision making.
Great, thank you very much. Well, let's talk about our first moment. So our first moment is selection and choice. And so, Thomas, how in your view, can online support selection and choice in the automotive journey as a moment that matters?
I think it can make it as simple as selecting that cake over the apple, clearly. Because I think the automotive's got opposite challenge to, for example, Nike, who I think need to create more choice and more personalized experience. But the automotive has got, I think the choice in there is overwhelming, and there are millions and in some cases billions of combinations the customer is supposed to choose from. So I think the moment or the selection and choice, the online or digital, can help to simplify it and make it easy for customer to select the right product that suits them.
Okay, so you've selected some opportunities that online brings in the moment of selection of choice, but also some challenges. Could you talk us through those?
Yeah, so I think the challenge, as I was saying, the auto, we work with an OEM who's got 2.8 billion combinations in their configurator. And that's just the product features, so the car features, before you start introducing the elements of availability and element of monthly price. So with all of that, it's just the choice is too large, and I think the digital can help to, the opportunity is there to simplify it to an extent where a customer can actually make the right choice and select the right car or the right product, whether it's a new car or used car or service pack or finance. It's about simplification.
Okay, so in summary, we can allow people to select their own journeys, personalize their own journey, allow an OEM or a retailer to understand more about what's what's important to that customer, but at the same time, the challenge here is to do that in automotive, massively complex.
Yes.
And there's some real tension internally to say who owns that process.
Yes, exactly.
Because there's a need to create more complex products, but there's a need to create more simplification for the customer.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Great, okay. So let's find out then what's going on in the mind of the customer. Why is selection and choice important, and how do you get it right? Leila, Katerina.
Yeah, so I'm asking you to go into this coffee shop, and they actually have 80,000 coffee combinations that you can choose from. So either you just look at this small selection of coffee combinations, but even by the thought of it, your brain already now disengages with making that choice. So it's back to the point, keep it simple, but from a brain perspective, our human cognitive ability to compare more than 5 options at a time, that's when your brain actually stops. So either they completely disengage and your customers actually flee or leave your website, or they actually look at the first 5 options but never get to the ones that might be actually relevant to them. So one rule of thumb is these 5 options at a time or 5 options in a row, and that's basically how you can categorize them. The coffee shop that I was talking about was actually Starbucks. So what does Starbucks do? You can choose from 80,000 coffee combinations, but what do you see in the store? It's exactly that, absolutely simplified, just a few options, but you have always the choice. You know that you can get anything at Starbucks that you want. They have it. So that's really, from a brain perspective, the most important takeaway. Just from a customer mindset, your customers are unable to take more than 5 options at a time.
And I think you made another really interesting point before when we spoke about the brain actively not wanting to make decisions.
Yeah, so the brain is actually quite lazy. So we don't like to put a lot of effort into things. Most of our decision making is driven unconsciously. And when the brain is asked to be consciously integrated, it only works 20% of the time. It doesn't like it. So it just is then steered by biases and everything that kind of looks familiar, and that's how we then make choices. So options generally are great because we like, as consumers, we like to find the best deal and the personalized and the best product for us, right? So we don't want to be limited in choices or options in that sense. But what you can do to help them is to basically present it in a brain-friendly way. So what you can often see is that companies who offer a lot, you see a lot of customers coming to the website and they have really high rates of customer visits, but what happens is the drop in the purchase conversion rate. And that's literally very often because the way it is presented, and you're not helping the customers to make it brain-friendly and make it easy for them to choose. And it's so simple.
Okay, so we got this paradox between wanting choice, but it needing to be brain friendly. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's look at our next moment in a moment once we've done the selection choice. So we had some considerations when designing this moment. Thomas.
Yes. So I think both Alex and Nick spoke about choices, but also about providing helpful advice and a starting point. So in here, starting point for shoppers could be, I have a car, and one of them is 250 a month, another 275, and another 300 quid. Let me start with that, because maybe I'm happy with the engines on all of them. Maybe all I need to do is to change the color or, I don't know, a sat-nav. But it doesn't mean that I have to go through 50 steps of a configurator and make decisions or choices that I don't want to make, such as selection of engine or gearbox and all of these things. Because for most people, it's actually quite irrelevant. They want to start with something that is simple, they can understand, and change just the elements they want to change, rather than having to build the whole car from scratch. But some people do, so I think you need to provide different ways for different people, because if I'm a petrol head, maybe I will start with engine, and the other bits will kind of be secondary, but if I don't care, maybe it's the color that is most important, or availability, or the monthly budget. So I think different ways to get in, but always with some starting points to start from, rather than unlimited options and going down the assembly line route, which is select model and a version and engine and gearbox and so on. Too much.
Okay.
I think also trying to narrow down the decision-making process quickly is important. So if, for example, I know that I want electric car or hybrid because I live in London, filter out everything that doesn't match the criteria quickly. Then maybe the next one is color, next one is, I don't know, big sat-nav screen or whatever it is, but quickly take away all the noise and allow me to get to that decision set as soon as possible. And when you are there, I think useful comparison, call it useful comparison, because what tends to happen in comparisons is that user actually is playing a game of spot the difference between 200 different attributes of a car, which are impossible, I think, to process and work out what the real difference is. So I think in here the comparison should be not showing every feature next to each other, which are same, but just showing what's different between car A and car B that I've selected. Why this one is 50 quid more than the other one.
So like the exceptions.
Yeah, like the exceptions, rather than everything that is the same. And also what's quite important is, I think, focus on the entire proposition and the entire sale rather than just the car itself. Because the part exchange, how much I get for it, what finance product I'm eligible for or comfortable with, together with the car, what, I don't know, service pack I have with it, or other options, that's quite important part of the entire consideration set, rather than just the car attributes themselves. So all of these things are, I think, quite important to get the mix right and do all of that when you are creating any kind of configurator or car selector or filter or anything that you see.
Great. Okay, thank you. So let's move on to our next moment that matters, finance and payment, a moment that for years has happened offline and been fulfilled by people, one-to-one or paper. Today can be supported by online. So, Thomas, how can online support it? What are the opportunities and challenges?
I think it's very similar to selecting the right product to buy, because the finance, it's a maze, because OEMs or more the finance houses, they are creating more and more different finance products and combinations of products with service packs and I don't know what else. And it's getting, I think, more and more confusing. And what you then end up with, actually customers not understanding what they got themselves into. Is that something that they've got a balloon payment at the end, or is it a lease, or what it is? So in here, providing transparency or help or support through that finance selection process is quite important as well, maybe more than the car, because the finance commitment tends to be, I think, seen as a bigger thing. Are they going to take my house and children away if I don't keep up my payments or not? So it's a big thing, I think.
In the challenges, there's an important here, customers don't understand finance products. You ran a piece of research, and what did it tell us?
You can skip to the next slide. I'm happy to tell you about that. So we conducted research on behalf of Summit for a global OEM, and we looked at customers who ordered their car online or at the dealership, with especially focusing on finances. And what we found that customers were completely overwhelmed by the financial decision. There were too many choices. They needed really reassurance, and they often misunderstood the product. So they weren't even really able to explain to us what is the finance product they actually ended up with. The biggest difference between online and offline customers was that those buying at the dealership actually had a chance to have that conversation with the dealer who educated them. So that educational reassurance element is really missing from the website. And when customers are presented with a lot of choices, they would fear making the wrong decision, especially when this comes with the financial obligations. So if you want to put that in simple math, if you have 2 options, you have 50% of getting it right. If you have 5, that suddenly decreases down only to 20. And with the finances, that's obviously way more than just 5.
What also, how you can help the customers to make a choice besides explaining your products easily and understandable, is how you position the best, in this case, finance options for your customers. And many companies are doing this actually. So the majority of people tend to go for the middle option because that's the safe option to go with. So we dislike everything far to the right because that might be a little bit too out of the ordinary or too risky. Then all the way to the left, that might be a little bit too boring or so let's go for the middle. And that's actually what many companies are using. So for example, The Economist, what do many consumers actually buy? It's the middle one. It has nothing to do with print and digital, the combination, and it's a better deal, etc., etc. Because actually it's also all the same price, but they know Amazon does that as well. And then they're using additional nudges to actually put the customer's decision into this middle. So, you know, you have best value, then with Amazon you have pictures around the best choice, etc., etc. So there are all these little nudges that you can do. I give you an example that you might come across in your personal life when you go out to restaurants. And some tricky, smart restaurants are actually doing that as well. So a previous traditional wine list starts with a house wine, which is normally the cheapest from the top, and then you go down with increased pricing. What happens though, because we know that the majority of people go for the middle, and that can have many different reasons, but for example, when we are with our friends or colleagues, well, we don't want to go for the cheapest, right? So, but the most expensive is not great either. So the middle one is, again, the safe bet. So what do restaurants do? And next time you can check that, they change the order. So now you have the most expensive wine at the top and the house wine, the cheapest, and at the bottom. But the middle wines are now much more expensive than previously. So the middle wines beforehand were around £6 and £7. Now the middle wines are between £9.50 and £10.50. So the restaurants make quite a lot of money here by knowing about this nudge. And you can, in your case, help customers actually to make the right choice when you kind of have figured out what is the right choice for them.
So in terms of recommendations, Thomas, what are they?
Well, I think again it's about the about simplifying the proposition, and maybe rather than selling the benefits of each one of them, selling it on assuring people that they are not making the wrong choice. Maybe that's what it is. And also turn the whole finance proposition from something that's led by lawyers and compliance to something that's led by sale, because I think that gives different perspective on how the whole thing is treated and how the whole thing is done.
And of course, nudge.
Yeah, of course, because still it's a big thing. Car, I mean, ideally at some point it will turn into something on the level of monthly utility bill, or how people get iPhones these days, 30 quid a month, and next year exchange it for something else. But I think we're not there yet, so it's still a big decision, and people need to be reassured and nudged at the right point. So I think maybe here this is the opportunity to provide the right customer support who proactively pushes the customer and explains the options or the risks in this case, and moves them to the next phase.
Great. Okay, our third moment, human touch, the nudge. Thomas, why is this important, and how can online help?
I think people, one of the parts of the research, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, sorry about that, stealing your thunder a bit ahead of time, it's that people, they go to dealership, loads of people go to dealership because they want to see the person that is selling them the car and advising them. And yet, I think there's a little bit of paradox, because when you ask people whether they trust dealers, they absolutely don't. I think online is the opportunity to do it right, and that is to almost have maybe a call center agent allocated to your case or to your sale or to your whatever it is throughout, and create that relationship or that human touch between, well, OEM, representative, and the customer, which can, I think, extend more time and more, I don't want to say channels, but more parts of the journey. So you can have someone who is basically leading you through the entire process of helping you to select the right cars, right finance, get the test drive, close the sale, all of these things. It doesn't have to be the John dealership. It can be someone who I think replaces that in a more efficient manner and creates almost a personal shopping experience for a customer.
So what's going on in the mind of the customer at this point? Why is human interaction fundamentally important?
Yeah, I think Nick alluded towards this already as well. The reason is that we like to, human touch or human interaction increases our trust. And especially when we make purchase decisions, that is quite anxiety driven because it's a big purchase and we're getting into long contracts, etc. Your customers or generally consumers are quite afraid. So hence they need reassurance, as Thomas said already, and this can be created by human touch. We trust simply humans more because we are more familiar with humans. We cannot decode machines as well as we can decode ourselves or other humans. So it's more familiar territory for us, basically, and that puts us at ease. And you provide this trust aspect and the reassurance. And this can be done quite simply by putting names on the website, by putting pictures of the people who deal with the customers and putting the packages or the financing together or helping them through the selection choice and the cars that they want to buy. For example, Habito is an online mortgage provider. And there are always 3 people with the names and with the photos of the people helping them who are always available for these customers. And customers then feel, okay, the brand is actually, or these people are accountable for the advice that they're giving me as well. There's a face behind this big, massive brand. So it's not so faceless and hence less scary. So addressing consumers' anxieties is a huge thing. It shouldn't be underestimated because our brains are literally hardwired to get rid of the negative and to, escape the fear, basically. And if you don't address it, you have a huge psychological barrier and disengager with your customers.
But what you're saying, though, it's got to be done correctly, yeah? Authentic pictures with names, not inquiries at brand.com. People have to be, it has to be believable, right?
Yes, of course. And also there need to be actually then, Andrea needs to respond and not all of a sudden Sally or somebody in the email or corresponding letter or whatever it is. So
consistency.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So in summary, Thomas, 4 recommendations when designing human touch into the
Yeah,
journey.
I think that human touch is important at the key moments, because I don't think you would be shooting up proactive video chat to someone who just arrived on the website and is kicking tires, basically. But when someone has came back and selected a couple of cars, is comparing them, maybe that's the point where it makes sense, financial as well as for the customer, to help them. And when they select the right finance, we're at the point of indecision, am I going to make the next step or not? That's important to actually reassure them, and that human touch can help you to convert better and move them to the next phase of the buying cycle.
Great. Okay, thank you, Thomas. Let's look at moment 4. So out of the 6, we saw reviews and recommendations as being massively important. Again, people's opinions have always been important in the shopping journey. How can online help, Thomas?
Well, same as in retail, because I think people feel reassured if someone who's done exactly the same thing before them had a positive experience or shared their experience, and it's almost wisdom of crowds, where I'm more likely to follow someone who seems to be independent and put more weight on advice from him rather than someone who's trying to sell me something. So,
but what's really the opportunity? Because you'd say, well, that's obvious, but in this opportunity that you've put,
I think in here it's important to have the right reviews and recommendations at the right point. So when I'm looking at selecting a dealer I'm gonna take a test drive from or buy the car from, well, give me the recommendations and reviews of that dealer, not of a car. When I'm looking at the car, give me the recommendations for a car, finance for the finance, and so on. Because I think if it's the right advice at the right time, in the right moment, and supports the enjoyment of the journey, it also builds a trust and relationship with the brand or with the machine I'm interacting with.
But we've also talked about not the opportunity to not be there, not take part. We saw it in retail where retailers left it to brands to do reviews, or brands left it to retailers to do reviews, and they lost out on a lot of traffic and interaction with customers. Again, you know, who should be involved in doing the reviews? Is it at the retail end or is it at the OEM end?
Well, no, I think it definitely, well, in the review, it should be the trusted market providers, such as Review and, I don't know, Trustpilot. It shouldn't be made up, and it should not be John in the dealership who is writing reviews about himself. Because then it's fake, and I think it's more damaging than building any trust in the relationship.
Yeah. What's going on in the mind of the customer? Why is this important?
So it's very similarly connected to the human touch, if you want. So basically, we have a social bias, and we, as Thomas already said, we used to be herd people or tribe people, if you want. Basically, from an evolutionary perspective, if we were singled out from the group, it meant our death. So loss of survival, and this is hardwired in our brain. It's very strong within us, and that's why we always look out for what the majority or what others are doing. And that's why recommendations or reviews are so powerful, because they are playing towards the social bias, they are playing towards our need, if you want, to get reassurance from the group or people like me or our peers, etc., that we are going to make the right decision. And remember, again, this is an important decision the customer makes in your industry, so heavily anxiety-driven. So the more reassurance you can give them with these different nudges, such as human touch, social bias, etc., the more effective, the more at ease they will be, the more likely they feel comfortable with you, which is a big plus point.
Great. You made a very interesting point about negative reviews and positive reviews.
Sorry. Yeah. Another aspect from the brain, basically. So the brain gives much more attention to negativity than positivity. Again, because we're hardwired to threat. And what that basically means is if the customer either views a negative review or has a negative experience with you, and we touch on this later on again, you need to make up with five positive experiences or 5 positive reviews. So quite an imbalance, but that's why we always recommend brands focus on the negative points, focus on the things that don't work very well that customers care about, though, because you can lose them so quickly if you have, or if they have negative experiences with you, rather than just positive, positive, positive. The negative aspects weigh much more heavily.
Great, thank you. So, Thomas, briefly, things to consider when thinking about reviews and recommendations?
Yeah, I think they need to be real, not fake, and it needs to be, authentic and balanced. They need to be about the right topics at the right parts of the journey, and because then, you know, they are reassuring and they will help you to move the people to the next phase. I mean, I use that a lot. You spoke about negative ones. When I'm shopping on Amazon, I always look at the 1 stars and 2 stars rather than 5 stars, because that's what stands out and that's what I want to avoid. So I think it's the same thing in here.
Great. Moment 5, the dealership.
It's about joining up the journey between online and offline to online, make it seamless and make the two environments and the opposite ends work in some kind of harmony rather than competing with each other.
We talked about online being able to create a common journey, allowing the dealer to be able to accompany the customer on their journey at any point.
Yeah, because, again, the research, some people never went to dealership when they bought car online. Some people did. People who did not go to dealership, most of them valued their time more and they valued the discount. But loads of people actually, you know, bounce between the two worlds, online and offline. They can at test drive, I don't know, pop into a dealership to see whether they will fit into the car or the pram will fit. Then they went back online and carried on. So if it's joined up, it makes more sense, because then, you know, even the marketing, the discounts and all of it can be much more targeted than the shooting in the dark, which is happening right now at, you know, 2 different ends.
Yeah. So from the mind of the customer, why is joining this journey up important?
We have a nice example to illustrate this. So I would like to ask if anyone in the audience had an experience when they called customer service, explained their problem, and they weren't really able to help, so they transferred you to a different department, different person, and you had to explain your situation over and over again. That's what really happens to customers when they want to buy a car now. They spend a lot of time researching online, configuring, then going through the finances, and then when they arrive to the dealership, they actually start again from zero. So all the time that they have invested really goes to nothing. And given that the customers have to explain their story again and again, this leads them to feel very frustrated, like a waste of their time, and they don't feel valued in the whole process. It can also pose as a threat for the customer's needs for security, because it could show that the company internally is not well aligned, which might mean that the customer could assume that if there are any problems, they're not going to be dealt with efficiently. And I think this, again, goes well with how customer expectations are with regards to customer experience, that we're used to having excellent customer experience, and when we don't have that, we tend to stay away from that brand because we know there are so many other options for us out there. But when it comes to the automotive industry, customers really don't have positive experiences, and because of this, they don't have high expectations, right? So as soon as someone would get this right and would be able to let customers transfer from the online to the offline seamlessly, that would create a huge advantage, because ultimately that's what customers want, so that they can feel valued and safe in this whole process.
Okay, thank you very much. So when joining up this journey, Thomas, what are the key considerations when designing it, in your opinion?
Well, joining them together, as we talked about, it needs to be almost seamless handover between, not handover, seamless continuation of working on the journey together, whether it's online, offline, with the OEM, with call center, with the dealer. It should matter, because in the end, it's the customer who is in there and you are trying to sell something to. So it needs to be, I think, joint exercise rather than a competition activity. And also, when the customer is then walking into a dealership, a customer online, they made a, when a customer walks into a dealership, it looks like everyone lies about their budget and about all of their circumstances and everything. They tend to say my budget is 300, but in reality it's 350, because people expect actually get the 50 quid of floor mats or whatever for free. Online, they don't think anyone is looking, so when they are using sliders for this is my budget and this is what it is, they don't lie, because they think no one is looking. So I think if you capture all of that correctly and send it to the dealer together with request for a test drive or inquiry or whatever it is, visit to dealership, then that dealer is better informed about the customer mindset and where they are and what their real budget is and interest. And if they walk into a dealership, and then can of course sell them something that is more appropriate or close the sale faster and better.
Great. Okay, thank you. Our final moment is the setting of expectations. Why is this important, and how does online support this, Thomas?
It's maybe connecting the pipeline, connecting the stock, and setting the right maybe delivery times. Then, and also the IT or technology can then help to update the customer at the right time if there is any change, or basically keeping customer in the loop and informed.
So why, from a brain power point of view, is this so important?
Yes, so there are quite great facts from neuroscience, actually, what happens in the brain when expectations are either met, not met, or exceeded. So if you think of some of your personal life examples, when you kind of expect from maybe your partner always a breakfast on your birthday or something, but this time they actually take you off work and go somewhere with you, and the expectation is completely exceeded. What happens in the brain is, next slide please, is that when expectations are met, a certain level of dopamine is actually released. When these expectations are exceeded, the amount of dopamine, so the dopamine is the reward system, that's like our happy hormones if you want, so we feel quite good when that happens. So when they're exceeded, actually more dopamine is released, and customers will remember, as you will, the surprise birthday much more than if your expectations are met. When expectations are not met, dopamine level is actually the lowest, and it actually comes to disappointment. So it's quite important that you know, what your customers expect, but that you also set expectations right. So from the research that we did, for example, with Summit, was that customers were told that the car will be delivered in a month's time, but it was delivered in 3 months' time. So that's exactly what happens then in the customer's brain. The release of dopamine is not met. On top, they're really frustrated because all of a sudden they need to reshuffle their lives because they don't have a car for 2 months. So rather under-promise and say the car will be delivered in 4 months, and if you're then able to deliver in 3 months, the exceeding expectation happens, and you have a surprise effect, and your customer will be really, really happy. What also happens when we look at customer journey, and Nick touched on these two effects as well, when a customer journey ends on a negative, it overshadows a lot of positive experience that happened or might have happened beforehand. So even if you had a great customer journey throughout, if you then ended on this not promising or meeting expectations, the likelihood that your customer will remember you negatively is really high, and this has been proven over and over again. So to get this last step really right, set the expectations of, for example, car delivery really, really well, so you have a happy light bulb there.
In here, I think it's more, for me, this is more not about the marketing and selling it in first place. It's more about the after sales or the delivery of the car or the fulfillment, actually. Don't overpromise what you cannot, don't promise what you cannot deliver, because that, I think, is more damaging than if you are realistic about things.
Thank you. And from Innovation Bubble, final summary?
Yeah, it's simply just what we said. So simplify, as Nick said as well, break it down, don't present more than 5 options at a time or in a category or in a row. You will help your customers tremendously from a brain perspective. You can then narrow it down, filter it down, and you know the options are there. You're not taking away options, it's just the way you present them at a time. You can nudge them, you know, by if the right choice for them, put them in the middle. The likelihood that they will choose the middle is high. Try to integrate the human touch because we just trust humans more, and there's some accountability customers believe when there are humans behind it. Then, yeah, as we said, try to join up the online and the offline experience because it just creates frustrations, as we all know. Set expectations right so you get the right dopamine level from your customers, and try to eliminate the negative because it weighs so much more than the positive.
Hi there, I'm Dale Wyatt from Suzuki. I can get my head around most of it. The bit that I don't see very many examples of the solution working is the seamless experience piece. This 360-degree view of the customer where we're using IT and online to be able to move from dealer to digital to dealer. I don't see many examples of anybody doing that well.
Yeah, I don't either, but that's not to say that it should not be. Yeah, I don't think anyone is really doing it well, because, of course, once the brand sends the lead to a dealer, that lead is never coming back, because the dealer will, you know, chuck in the floor mats and his daughter just to close the sale and never let the customer go or the lead to go. So I don't think, people are doing a good job at the moment, but that's not to say it's an opportunity definitely to explore, because that's what people want to do.
For me, the challenge is that customers are happy to play online, configure, price, etc., but don't want to give the details. There's a high abandonment rate the minute you present a form that says fill in these details. And you need to provide data so that the dealer can do their part and be aware of the customer. So it's how you capture the lead bit through management, I think you can work through, but it's that customer abandonment piece which leads to the disconnect.
Yeah, I think it depends how far you take that online journey, because if you are selling the car online, then obviously people expect to provide the details of everything. If they are getting finance online, if it's just a lead, well, it depends how you go about it, because if part of that entire package you are sending to a dealership is, for example, a used car evaluation, then you should not be giving that for free. You should be giving that for exchange, for customer details. Yeah, I think people are more than happy to part with their details if it's an exchange for some value they will get. So if it's an evaluation of their existing car, good configuration, maybe a little bit of a discount or uplift on the used car, and good finance deal, I think they are more than happy to do that. And also, if in the dealership there is something waiting for them, car for a test drive that I really want to drive instead of, the usual, I end up with a diesel, but I'm interested in petrol, then again, I think it will work.
Great, thank you very much. I think we'll call it time, unless there's any other burning questions. Otherwise, get Toby at the bar. I want to say thank you very much to all of our speakers today. I'd like to thank you all very much for supporting our third Leaders in Automotive event and coming. I hope you found it useful, and there are some nuggets and some moments that matter to you. There's a great thing that they talk about innovation being a combination of observation, association, and networking. I think we've done some observation and association. It's now time for some networking. So I'll close off, say thank you very much indeed. Please hang around and enjoy the refreshments we've laid on. We'd love to get some of your comments and your thoughts to some of the questions we've raised today on camera, if you would be so kind. So we might come and grab you. And hopefully we'll see you at the next event. We also are going to write to you all to get some feedback and also ask for your thoughts on what we do next. Yeah, because we try and think what will be interesting, but actually the best answers will come from you yourselves. So thank you very much indeed.